question. But when she mentioned it to me, I mentioned that the first place we needed to go was to Warsaw to see Emma's exotic eggs. Now I know some of you've been there because I've taken 2 groups there myself, so I know some of you've been there. But when I called Emma, she, like the rest of us, is getting up in years and is having an eye problem. So at the first of the year, she'll be leaving her home. So this is almost the last chance to get to see her eggs, and they are just fantastic, as some of the ladies up back there can tell you because they have been there. So we just settled this morning. So Wednesday, October the 21st, we'll leave Tractor Supply at 1 o'clock. Her program is an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it'll be $4 for her charge. And then we would ask you to tip whoever would be driving the car. So we will need to know some of you that are going, that if you can drive and be willing to take some other people. Because as you know, trying to get a bus is pretty expensive anymore, and we didn't want to go into all that kind of expense. And so anyway, if you've not seen it, it's just fantastic what she does. So I'm going to send this around today and hope that some of you can sign up while you're here today. Other than that, if you get home and find out you can go and you have some friends that you want to invite, then call the museum so we'll have an idea. She cannot take more than 25 people in her home. So I know 2 people is going to be the end of the list, is Tracy and Gene. So that leaves only 23 more spaces.
And can I just say, I sent around a sign-in sheet. There are 2 different things. So if you just read at the top which one you're signing. One for the trip and one just for sign-in to let us know that you're here. Thanks.
What day is that?
Pardon?
What day is that?
It's a Wednesday, October 21st. Today's speaker I heard about from Trula to start with. She told me that she had heard about this lady who gave this presentation, and somebody else had given me this name, and that she had the story about Gene Stratton Porter. I thought that just had to go into the museum history in this luncheon. And so at this time, from Decatur, Pendy Selking. I knew I would mess this name up. She said her mother gave her this name, P-E-N-D-Y, so she would never have a nickname. Well, you know what happened. She was called Pen.
Thank you. Thank you. Brain used to be because it never was. So I must refer to my notes quite often. My name is Pendy Selking, and I volunteer at the Wabash County Historical Museum in Decatur. I used to chair a chocolate day in May and greet people at the door of the Christmas walk in December. After I wore one of these outfits, the Victorian dress for an event, I would sell it at Yvonne Marie's Antique Mall along with those period dresses. That I have made on my own, and that's how I got started in fashion and historical sewing in December of 1999. Mrs. Charles Dugan and Charles Porter were first cousins. Now this would be the Historical Society indicator and Gene Stratton Porter's husband. They were first cousins. So the Porters would visit the Dugan home in Decatur, which is now the Historical Museum. And I would like to introduce them in different outfits that appear in photos of Mrs. Porter. I have them up here. And these pictures can be found in the library, at her home in Geneva, Rome City, and here on the table in front of you. I have a wilderness outfit, which is mine, a morning dress, a pink dress, a dog daughter's dress, a peacock blue with jet beads, the mature dress with a cane and a hanky, and the California dress that she wore when she was going to be making the movies. Now this is my interpretation of what Mrs. Porter appeared to me, because in most of the books, it doesn't say she walked like this, or she talked like this, or she wore this, or she wore that. She would tell you what she liked in some of the books. What I wanted to do with this fashion show is to run a parallel with Mrs. Porter's life with fashion and history. The liberation movement, wars, movies, Paris, and cars had and have a large influence on fashion for both men and women. The materials that were used were silk from the Orient, linen and cotton from seed, leather and wool from animals. Also, horsehair was used. Dyes were extracted from flowers, nuts, leaves, and vegetables. My outfit is the wilderness or the swamp outfit, and it was Gene's favorite place to be. Man's shirt, pants, vest with pockets, and a basket for collecting. A cane for pushing back the brush, and these boots are to walk through the swamp. I decorated my shirt with flowers and tracks, all part of Gene's life. And she also carried a weapon to protect herself from poisonous snakes. And there were 3 different kinds at the time. In 1755, that's about 254 years ago, a German-born man was awarded a British patent for a sewing machine. And the reason I included this is because I thought that most of these clothes were made by hand. No, the sewing machine was invented in 1755. In 1790, Thomas Singh was a cabinet maker and received a patent in London. 1794, Fort Wayne was built. 1820, elastic was invented and patented. Now, I would have thought elastic, again, was just invented and it was invented by accident. 1825, Sophie Luke Winnington was born in Adams County, and that was 184 years ago. Her father put her home in her name. Very unusual for that time period, but necessary for the circumstances. She was a preacher's wife and formed the Ladies' Aid. 1825, about 200 people in Fort Wayne. And the reason I picked Fort Wayne was because it was closest to her 2 homes. It was in the middle of her 2 homes, Rose City and Geneva. In 1827, surveyors were mapping the national road through Indy. If some of you know, this is where the Huddleston House is. This is between Richmond, Indianapolis, and this was to open up the west. 1830, a French tailor made 20 machines in Paris to stitch soldiers' clothing. Hand sewers came to the factory and smashed the machines. This was job security. Okay, they still do today, don't they? Anything for job security. Okay, that was 75 years after the sewing machine was invented. Well, they didn't have computers to send out messages or newspapers and stuff like that everybody had access to, so it took a little while for information to get around. In 1832, the canal was started in Fort Wayne, and it brought Irish and more Germans to the community. Influence on clothing from different cultures. 1840, there's 2,000 people in Fort Wayne. 1845, Johnny Appleseed dies. Now you can kind of relate pictures or his stories and relate to it, and that was in 1845. 1846, the Trail of Tears is formed. It was a hard march for the Indians to Oklahoma, Indiana. 1847. First chocolate bar was invented in England. 1850, 1860, the railroads and plank streets in Fort Wayne. And the ladies liked the plank streets because their dresses were very long and trailed behind them, and so they could walk on the streets and stay out of the mud. So that was in 1850, 1860, when the railroads and plank streets in Fort Wayne. 1851, now you recognize this name, Isaac Merritt Singer, a trained engineer, redesigned the sewing machine to the modern machine we know today. And I have a little hand-cranked sewing machine up here, and that was the first machine made. Now we have a pedal on the floor, and we have motorized, and now I can push a button on this sewing machine and walk over and work on this sewing machine. Come a little bit, you've come a long way. 1855, Phoebe Ann was born. Her father died of exposure, and she was sent to a workhouse, which was an orphanage at that time. At the age of 10, at 15, she ran away and went back to her mother's home in Ohio and learned how to shoot her father's gun for game. At 20 years old, she changed her name to Annie Oakley and was shooting her way to stardom. 1859, Harper's Ferry, rated by John Brown. 1861, 1865, the Civil War between the states. And right in the middle of it, in 1863, August 17th, Geneva Grace Stratton, the 12th and last child, is born near LaGrow, Wabash County, Indiana, right in the middle of the Civil War. Annie Oakley is 8 years old. Now, I've pictured in my mind Annie Oakley being on us. I did not picture her in about the same time frame as Gene Stratton Porter. Still 1863, Lincoln delivers the Gettysburg Address, and we can all identify with seeing him delivering the address. And that was the same time Gene Stratton Porter was born. Okay, black dress. Would you please step out here, please? This is a black morning dress. It has lace, jewelry, bustle, slip, pantaloons, hat, and handbag. The locket at the neck may hold something belonging to the deceased. It could be a picture, it could be hair, it could be a piece of cloth. A widow would wear black for 2 years if her husband died, 1 year if a child died, and 6 months for a grandchild. Family pictures, now this is just really strange. Family pictures were sometimes taken at the time with the eyes of the deceased open or closed. This family, because of the families did not get together that much, they could not take pictures that much, they didn't dress up that much, and so when somebody would die, babies, you'd see them sometimes held in mother's arms. That baby might have just died, and so they dressed it up, and everybody got dressed up for the funeral, and then they would, okay. Family plots and cemeteries was something too that I had just found out, did not know about, and this is why Gene Stratton Porter's parents are all in the same cemetery. with some children because the father would go buy so many plots for the family. And then the children of that father would be buried there. But his husband and wife would be buried with their family, maybe in another cemetery. The children, grandchildren, that's where they all get separated. So Charles is buried with his parents in Decatur at the Dugan plot. 1872, February, Sister Mary Ann dies in an accident. In July, brother Lad in the Wabash River. Horse-drawn streetcars in Fort Wayne. Yellowstone as a national park is established. Gene is 9 years old. 1875, February, Gene's mother dies. Gene is 12 years old, and her mother Mary was 59 years old. And that's why I brought the black mourning dress. She lost 3 people right in a row, very close. 1876, Alexander Graham Bell patents the telephone. Annie Oakley is 20 years old, meets her future husband in a shooting match, and she outshoots him. And later she joins the Bill Cody Wild West show. She performs here and in Europe. And she was not taking the Concorde back and forth. So it took him a little while to load a whole circus up and take it across and bring it back. 1881, James Garfield, president for 199 days, and he was assassinated. 1881, General Electric buys out the Jenny Electric Company in Fort Wayne, Broadway Street. Change in fashion. Organizing of American Red Cross was also in 1881. 1884, Charles and Gene meet in Rome City. 1885, Indian uprising led by Apache Chief Geronimo. The pink dress, please. With bustle, pantaloons, slip, collar, lace around the bottom of the dress, making a design, matching the design on the collar. Lace was made by hand or imported from Spain, needle or shuttle, crocheted or tatted. Now this would have been the wedding dress, like in the picture that Gene wore. Pink was one of her colors, roses was one of her flowers. That's why I thought they went together. And the picture of her is very light. So that's where I drew my conclusion, okay? 1886, Gene and Charles are married and they move to Decatur, 147 South 2nd Street, the former home of Faber's Sporting Goods store, across from a large furniture store now known as Yvonne Marie's Antique Shop. The streets were dirt or mud. Okay, next we have the white dress. White eyelet dress, slip pantaloons with a collar and a hat. This same dress could be worn without a collar, with an apron, worn over the head, or vest made of lace and slipped over her head. The same basic dress, different looks, and sometimes kept the dress clean. There you go. And for kids, this was a good idea, to wear covers over their clothes so they could keep changing. 1887, August 7th, Gene and Charles have a daughter, Jeanette. And they lived in Decatur in a rented home for 3 years. The row of buildings they lived in burnt down after they moved out. I have a picture on display of this location, but the picture was taken in 1921-22. And that was 33 years after they moved out. The picture was taken. I have all the pictures of their homes here, except for the ones in California. There was one in California that she had, but I did not have a picture of it. We'll do that next. Okay. 1888, they moved to Geneva. 1889, 50,000 pioneers entered Oklahoma Territory for settlement. 1889, the bra was invented. Gene is 26 years old, but was 47 when the bra was patented in 1910. Most of her life, her chest was in a corset or wrapped. The bra was patented by a 19-year-old socialite, Mary Phillips Jacobs, a New Yorker of English heritage. 1890, Gene's father dies in January. 1891, the first electric car came to Fort Wayne and ran on batteries at 12 miles per hour. Gene was 28 years old. Now, is there an old saying, somehow what goes around comes around, because aren't we going back to electric car again? 1892, Charles starts the Geneva Bank. 1893, the zipper was invented, but not widely used until the 1930s, before they used hooks and buttons. 1895, cabin in Geneva was completed. 1901, a 63-year-old Michigan school teacher, 63-year-old school teacher, I had to read that again, over the Niagara Falls in a self-designed wooden barrel. Her name was Ann Taylor. That was 108 years ago. The 26th President, Theodore Roosevelt. 1903, the flight of the Kitty Hawk by the Wright brothers. 1911, November the 27th, granddaughter Jeanette Helen Monroe is born. That was her first grandchild. The peacock dress, please, with jet beads inserted. Jet beads have a history and a legend. The jet worn over the heart. This is supposed to be jet, okay? Worn over the heart should protect the wearer from scorpions and snake bites. Jet is known as a protective stone among the North American Indians. They also used it for comforting properties to help them after the death of a relative. The healing properties, in addition to its protective qualities, the main physical ailment that can be alleviated by jets are arthritis and inflammation of the joints. It is also helpful in the treatment of bronchitis, colds, and headaches. Jet will provide great support and help alleviate the pain and suffering caused by separation or death of loved ones. It also protects its possessor from enemies and evil thoughts, while at the same time giving him new courage. Now, in the Victorian days, jet was imported from England, and they have since depleted their source. Now the jet comes from Mongolia, and not of the same quality. And jet is coal that has become petrified in the course of millions of years. In 1912, April, the Titanic goes down. Gene buys the property at Rose City and starts work on the cabin. To me, I remember the movie, so I could say, okay, Titanic goes down, she buys the property at Rose City. And the reason she bought the property at Rose City was because they were draining the swamps in Geneva, and the oil wells were in Geneva also, so that kind of took care of the swamps also. 1913, 1921, Woodrow Wilson is president. 1914, March, granddaughter Gene Stratton Monroe is born. Panama Canal opens, and that's in 1914. Now we have the purple dress with the cane. This is 1915. The dress for the relaxed Gene at the age of 52 years old. She likes pockets, fabric, and color. She walks with a cane. That spring, Gene moves into the new Limberlost at Sylvan Lake, Rose City. In 1917, my mother was born and Gene was 54 years old, and Rose City was becoming a very active community with the interurban and cars. Now, the reason the dress is so relaxing is right before Gene leaves to go to out east to a, what we call a health spa now. But she went out there to relax and to regain her strength from fighting with the government. So, okay. 1918, the years of hard physical work, exposure to the outdoors, and her fight to save the swamplands took a toll on Gene's health. And that fall, Gene checks into a New York clinic and takes 1 month needed vacation. World War I ends 1918. In 1919, ratification of the 18th Amendment, Prohibition. Now you can see the pictures of Prohibition, and so you kind of get an idea of the clothing and things that they wore then. Here's 1919, Gene moves to Los Angeles. She's popular and in the public eye, and she is all dressed up in pretty clothing, expensive jewelry. In 1924, January, Gene starts her own movie production. January, Gene starts her own movie production company, and she buys California in June. June, grandson is born. December, 6 months later, after her grandson is born. She did get to see this grandson. So Gene dies in an automobile accident in California. She was 61 years old. My mother was 7 years old. I guess I didn't realize Gene was alive when my mother was alive. Gene says, quote, laid aside boots and breeches, which is what I have on, put on crepe and beaded chiffon and a French bonnet with roses and a veil, and I stand up and speak my little piece with the best of them. 1926, Charles Darwin Porter dies and is buried in Decatur, Indiana, in his parents' plot. 1927, Charles Lindbergh flies to Paris, France, the spirit of St. Louis. In 1929, October, Wall Street crashes. Start of Depression. 31st president is Herbert Hoover. The changes in clothing were remarkable over the 251-year period. From the sewing machine to Wall Street crash, from horse to airplane. And women were to be silent and reserved. But women like Gene were pioneers out of necessity to be part of our important, fast-moving history. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Is there any questions that I might be able to answer?
Well, first of all, can I say thanks to you guys? You can go get more comfortable, sit down, and not have to stand up there while she answers questions.
Now, did everybody get enough pictures and everything of them?
Oh, let me get one.
Yeah. Now, do you want us to stand in any particular? Yes. Oh, very good. Yeah.
Can you scoot a little bit closer together so I can get
Yep, there we go. Middle, sideways. Yeah. Sideways, sideways. There we go.
this way, Beth. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right. Stay, girls, stay.
Hold on.
Do
Hold on.
Janice Dawes.
Beth Stein.
Patricia Walters.
Linda Keister.
Thanks.
Okay, question? Yes.
Where is Gene Stratton Porter buried now? Is she still in California or is she?
No, her youngest grandson, who never met her, brought her back to Rome City. So she is buried at Rome City, and her daughter is buried with her. Yep.
Is some of her children buried at Hopewell, or some of the family?
Her family is, her father bought the plot. Yeah.
None of her children are.
No,
Her brothers, siblings, women.
brothers and sisters are, but none of her kids, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How old was she when she wrote her books?
Oh,
That's early her age.
she started writing when she lived in Decatur because she was bored. She did not like living in the city, but her husband thought that since she was living in the city because she was living here when he met her, okay? So he thought that she liked the city, but her father just moved her here because her mother had passed away, and so they thought, well, she lives in the city, I'll keep her in the city, but she was not happy. So she started writing then, when they first got married.
So she had love of the swamp before she ever married.
Yeah, she ran around. Have you read any of her books? Okay, it tells you in there that she liked to go out in the woods by herself. She was the youngest as well. So she liked going out in the woods by herself, or being by herself. And her dad she worked with her dad too. So that was a big help to learn things that way too. So she's in her 20s probably. She started writing and they turned them into movies. Somebody suggested they thought Freckles might have been the first movie she was making. So I don't know, I did not read that, but that could have been it. So, any other questions? Yeah.
In 1917, she went to the spa because she was exhausted fighting the government over swamps, preserving the swamps.
And the butterflies and the moths and the birds, and because they were cutting the trees, the CC camp was draining the swamps.
Okay.
All this kind of stuff that was taking away all the natural habitat.
And she was forward thinking.
Definitely. And that's why I said she's so independent. We're supposed to be quiet.
Right.
You know, and that never worked. For her, you know, we would not have the preserve, and now they're putting water back into Geneva. So,
But isn't that a state park?
yeah,
That's what I thought.
yeah. So that's what we need to do is preserve some of the things.
Right.
And we don't always know.
The swamp was undesirable.
Right. Because it wasn't producing anything.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what that was about.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Yes, by a car.
She was T-boned. She was in the back seat, and she had a driver, and she was in the back seat, and it had T-boned and killed her outright. So, yeah.
As far as the fashion aspect of it, was she making her clothes? Did she have a seam? Did she actually set a standard in the fashion industries?
The fashions that I showed you were of that period because those were the pictures I found of her. So they would have been of that picture. I don't think she stayed at home long enough to sew. From what I gather, none of the books say she made this dress or made that dress. Her husband had money that she could buy clothes made or ready-made clothes of the period. But as far as her making them, I'm going to say no, because she did not stay home that much. She wrote, she had a secretary, she had a housekeeper. And she had a couple of, I think one, if I I remember correctly, one of her secretaries married one of her drivers. Or her gardener or something, I'm gonna say driver, because that's how much they were with her all the time. Yeah,
Do any of her garments still exist today?
not that I know of, they just weren't important. You know, and I'm sure this outfit wouldn't have lasted, excuse me, at all, you know, so. Any more questions?
Is it possible to get any of her movies, the movies that were made from her books? Are they in a vault somewhere, disintegrated, are they available?
They could be out in California someplace. I don't know if they show her house or not. Does anybody else know?
The house up there, there's a visitor center, and some of those things are available there. Because they made, I'm trying to remember if there was more than one copy of Freckles, but they have the book, they have books. And
That's the one in Geneva.
But
No, this is the one in Rome
Rome
City at the
City.
do
house.
they have the movies?
I don't know, I cannot remember. It seemed to me that they might have, but I just remember them talking about it, and I do know that they have the books, but.
And I know Girl of the
Can't remember.
Limberlost is, but that's a more modern version, but Girl of the Limberlost film
And
is
some of her
available.
things are even on talking books. Like The Harvester is a book, you know, that you can listen to.
Audiobook.
Yeah, an audio book.
So
And
I
I
think
think quite
Geneva
popular.
has-
Yeah, I know that there is a
Geneva has
video
some.
of her life, and a booklet and a video of her life that go together that you can purchase at Geneva.
Yeah, Geneva has some kind of books. Yeah, okay. Did that answer your question, or did I choke so much?
No. All your friends jumped in.
Yeah, okay, any other questions here? Well, it's very enjoyable. I'm glad everybody came. It's a good audience. You were very attentive. I appreciate it, even the gentleman here. Did you get anything out of the talk?
Yes.
Okay,
Can I interject something?
Yes.
I'm her husband. You know, you do realize she made these clothes. Okay? And she has a sewing room at home, quote unquote. And so when the weather's bad, winter, you know, she lives in a sewing room. And, but she got real interested in Gene Stratton. Summer, we took an extended vacation. And we was up to Alaska and drove back through, across Alaska and back through Canada. And there was long stretches, you know, wilderness, nothing. And she had Gene's books with her, and I had her read them out loud while I was driving. And I learned a lot about Gene, and like somebody mentioned before, how forward-looking she was in her conservation mindset, you know, back when the land was just something to be conquered and to be, you know, bended to, twisted to your own use. And that's what she was so upset, like Penny said, so upset about them draining the swamps and drying up the creeks and everything. And I got a big vacation listening to her reading while I was driving. So if you haven't read the books, I would do so. Besides entertaining, it's very educational.
That was the tales. And
Yeah.
what about the tales?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did not know that, well, I did know she went to Wabash High School, but she never graduated.
Oh my. Oh
And that's in one of the books that we have.
Okay, did you have that one book up here? Yes, and I read that one too, but I guess I never, yeah. Do you have that here?
Yeah, we do. It's published by
Yeah, that's a good book too. I did not read her books.
Indiana Historical Society Publishing Society.
Yeah, I read her books before I started this because I did not want to know the girl personally or the lady personally, but I did want to know about what else was going on in the world, and I look at the pictures and I would make the dress. Then one of the books I read, it said that she liked pink. One of the books said she liked roses. One of the books would say something else, peacock blue. She liked peacock blue. And so these things I put all together and made her clothes. So that's how I, with my version, like I said, my version of what I thought in my mind she was wearing. Yes.
Now, do you love the great outdoors also?
Let's say I love the smell of fresh wood. You know?
She likes her air conditioning and her modern convenience.
Okay, my look on, I am a spoiled American and I just love it. So I do like my air conditioning and I do like my heating and stuff, but I do like to redo furniture. I love the smell of wood. I love the smell of new plowed ground and stuff. I love that smell. It's so distinct. And that was another thing the books brought out to me, is when you go outside and you smell the rain, oh, it's an altogether different thought in your brain. You see a bird and you hear it. You can see a butterfly. I saw a monarch yesterday on my seat, and I thought, now what would Gene think of that? Pretty, you know, and so when you read her books, you can identify a little bit, feel a little bit more of earth, nature, the sky. Yeah. I guess it's something you learn to appreciate too more as you get older. So,
Anything else? I think it's interesting that it was all about the time of Teddy Roosevelt too, and you know, he established the national parks.
right.
And it was about the same. She was interested in the environment.
There were more men than there were women, and I think that's what helped support her a lot. They were more willing to help her. So, yeah, they supported her. I don't think the women did as much because I think the women were still, when I was growing up, you were to cook and clean and take care of kids, you know, and instead of being outside. So, anything else?
Did she marry Wild Bill Big Time?
No, she did not.
Frank
She married
Butler.
a man named Frank something.
Frank Butler.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, he supported her because she was an alcoholic. That's why I was seeing her. She's and that's what
That's right. Oh, we were dead. They threw that out.